Hello guys, and welcome to this webinar which is about exams. This is your second thematic webinar. Last period we talked about how to choose a program of study and how to look at a variety of universities and to take into account a variety of factors in your choice. So today and during this period, during these 2 weeks, we'll be talking about exams, and you'll be working with your advisor on planning your preparation and learning about the different exams that you're required to take. Now, exams are something that are very important to your application process, both undergraduate and graduate. And today we're going to talk basically about two different types of exams. The first type of exam is an English exam. So we'll talk a bit about the TOEFL and what you will need to do to prepare yourself and what it is, and when, or more or less in what month you will need to take it. We'll also talk about exams that are called general knowledge exams, exams that measure, let's say, conocimiento general. So we'll talk a bit about that and the differences for undergraduate and graduate and which exams you will be required to take. So in general, I think it's really important to emphasize that this topic is extremely important because exams serve as a standard and quantitative measurement. This isn't always the best measurement of a student, but we need to realize that oftentimes universities in the U.S., both undergraduate and graduate, really put a lot of weight on exams to determine both admission and financial aid. And one reason is because it is a standard measure across the world. So because students from Colombia and students from Germany and students from Kenya and students from China and students from Australia will all be taking these types of exams, it's a way that they can compare students that may come from very different academic backgrounds. So for example, if you're applying for graduate studies in the U.S., maybe studies in Colombia are 5 years at undergraduate levels, but studies are 4 years or 6 years from a different country. So exams really do serve as a way to establish a standard measurement for students who have various types of academic backgrounds. So first we're going to talk about the English exams. So we're going to focus in this presentation on the TOEFL. TOEFL stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language. Another exam that you may have heard of is called the IELTS. And these are kind of the two most accepted international English exams from U.S. universities. We're going to focus on the TOEFL because it is the exam that you will 99% likely be taking. It is accepted by 100% of the universities in the U.S. And the IELTS is accepted by every year a few more, but still not at 100%. So we really do favor the TOEFL with this program simply because of that, because it will give you, it will be accepted by any institution in the U.S. to which you hope to apply. So the TOEFL is a computer-based test that is valid for 2 years. So once you take the test, your score can be accepted for up to 2 years. And if you pass that 2-year mark, then you have to take the exam again. The exam measures 4 different skills, which are reading, writing, speaking, and listening. These are the 4 skills that both exams, actually, the IELTS and the TOEFL measure. And the TOEFL is scored on a scale of 0 to 30 points per section. So the total score is a score over 120, out of 120. And so if I take the TOEFL exam and I get a 20, let's say, on each section, 20 on reading, 20 on writing, 20 on speaking, and a 20 on listening, then that's a total of 80. So my TOEFL score is an 80. This exam must be taken really by any international student who comes from a non-English speaking country or who English is not their first language. There are some exceptions if people studied undergraduate in the U.S. and then are going to a graduate program or studied in sometimes bilingual high schools. But for all of you guys, you will be required to take the TOEFL. And one thing that I think is really important to point out regarding the preparation, This is an exam that measures your level of English. So to prepare for this exam, you will need to both work on your English level as in terms of your conversational English, kind of general English classes, your grammar, but you will also need to take specific test prep classes. And that's really because this exam does measure your level of English, but it also measures how well you can take this exam. So for example, we have students who really do have a high level of English, but who do not do well on this exam because they do not know what to expect. They have not prepared for this exam. There are ways you can prepare for this exam, and there are little tricks that you can learn and things that occur frequently, different types of questions that through your preparation you will learn about these things. So this is why it's very important to both improve your level of English and your grammar and your conversation, because those things will help you on the exam. But it's also very important that you prepare specifically for the TOEFL exam. So the first step in your preparation is to create a free account through ETS. ETS is it's called Educational Testing Service, and it's the company that administers the TOEFL and the GRE, which is the general knowledge exam for graduate students. So your first step is to create an account. You can go to www.ets.org, www.ets.org/TOEFL, or you can just do a Google search for ETS TOEFL and it should be the first hit. And then you go to where the arrow is signaling on the page and go to My TOEFL IBT Account. So once you click on that, you'll arrive at this page, which basically has a place for returning users once you have an account, and it has a place for a new user. So if you do not already have a TOEFL account, then you go to the place for new user, you click sign up, and that should take you to this page, create a profile. So it will ask you for quite a bit of information, demographic information and the like, passwords and information about what you hope to use this exam. So it'll take a few minutes, just go ahead and fill that out, but it's really important that you make this account so that you have access to your to the TOEFL page and can get more information. I want to show you this screenshot, which is the TOEFL Online School Report. So about 2 weeks after you take your exam, you will get back an online report that looks like this. And it will have the test date and your score in each section of the exam, and then the total score. Below it will talk a bit about what this score means in your competencies. So if you score a certain level in the reading section, it talks about this is kind of the competencies you have within the reading skill. A couple things about your TOEFL score. So most universities, a lot of universities will put a minimum TOEFL score. And this varies depending on if you're an undergraduate student or a graduate student. This varies many times depending on your area of study. For example, if you're going to study a master's or a doctorate degree in a social science, something that requires a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of research with written English, then it often will require a TOEFL score that's higher. We've seen TOEFL scores, a minimum of 100, minimum of 105 for certain areas. It's that 100 is a common minimum, especially for graduate studies, and it's a really good goal to put to reach 100 points on your TOEFL. If you can get higher, that's wonderful, but 100 is a good minimum goal to try to reach. Some universities may have a minimum such as a 90 on the TOEFL, and some may have an 80, and an 80 is pretty common for a graduate program, although it is, again, good to strive for a higher score. That's why it's really important, if you haven't already taken a diagnostic TOEFL exam, or if you are not already familiar with a lot of the TOEFL preparation material, it's important to start that as soon as possible. And that's really what we're talking about this week, and also why this presentation is pretty early in your cycle, so that you can go ahead and get started. This is not a process where you can, as we say in English, you can cram. And cram simply means to try to stuff as much information in your head as possible. So if I'm cramming for an exam, that means that I wait until the last minute, and then I study, and hope that the information is in my head. But in the case of these types of exams, it's a method that doesn't really work all that well. What works a lot better for these kind of exams, such as the TOEFL, such as the exams we'll discuss in just a minute, is to study a little bit each day over a long period of time. So now we're in August. We're in middle to late August. You probably have a couple months at least before you need to take these exams. Some of you may be a little bit earlier, but some of you may be a little bit later. So you have enough time to start studying each day. And remember, that's the key, to build up that foundation. And that really, really will help you on the day of the exam. So moving on to the next exam. This is an exam exclusively for graduate students. It is called the GRE, the Graduate Record Exam. So this exam measures your knowledge in 3 different areas. It has a section called Analytical Writing, a section called Verbal Reasoning, and a section called Quantitative Reasoning. So essentially it's writing, verbal, and math, which is the quantitative reasoning. The 2 second sections that you see on here that have score ranges from 130 to 170 points are the 2 main sections, and the sections that universities take into account more than the others. The analytical writing section is also important, but universities will also have a measure of your writing skills and of how you perform in that area through your essay and maybe through a writing sample. So the 2 maybe most important sections are really the verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning, or rather verbal and math. So get 150 points in verbal and 150 in quantitative. So I would have a total score of 300 points. The total score is really taken with the combination of those 2 sections. And then on the writing score, it's a score that's apart. It's in its own kind of little world. So this exam is also administered by ETS, and it's an exam that is valid for 5 years, as opposed to the TOEFL, which is valid for 2 years. And this exam is presented both on computer. It's both a computer-based and a paper-based exam. This depends on the city and on the availability within the city. Currently in Colombia, the great majority of the exams are on computer. It's still available on paper in Barranquilla. So for this exam, basically the cities that have computer-based exams are Medellin. In Bogota, the exam is really in Chía, but it's kind of the Bogota metropolitan area. In Barranquilla, it's also in computer and also in paper. In Bucaramanga in computer, and Cali in computer. And some of these cities have many more dates than others. Some have dates many days during the year, and some only have like 3 dates per semester or 2 dates per semester. So it is really important to see kind of what the plan is for the GRE in your city, or you might have to travel to a nearby city, or even to Bogota, or to another main city in order to find an available date. So the majority of graduate candidates must present the GRE exam. And it's important to note that the GRE is not exclusively for international students. The GRE is for any candidate for a graduate program. People from the US, people from other countries, people who have gone to school in English, and people who have not. So although it is an exam that is presented in English, it does not necessarily measure your level of English. That's not the goal of the exam. But you do have to have a very advanced level of English in order to be able to do well on the exam. Some exceptions, for example, a program that's LLM, which is a master's in law. LLM students do not have to present. It's not a requirement for those programs. It's also not a requirement for some music programs, depending on the type of program, depending on the specific university at which you want to study. So for those of you who are musicians and hoping to do a program in music, it is important to really look closely at those requirements. But I do want to say that if your university says the GRE is optional, it's really not optional. It really means you do need to take it, because you may be able to get admission to the university if you don't have a GRE score. But your chances of financial aid are much lower if you do not have a GRE score, and especially if you do not have a high GRE score. So you may come across universities, that say GRE optional. And for you, just keep in mind that that really means that you need to take the exam. Also, many universities will not have a minimum GRE score. Universities kind of want to keep this flexible. What they might have, and if they don't have it posted on their website, then maybe you can ask for it, is an average score. So you might say, what was the average score of the students that were admitted last year, or the last 2 years or 3 years of the incoming classes in your programs? What were their averages? What was the highest? What was the lowest? And remember that you guys should strive for a high score. You are not average students. You guys are sobresalientes, excelentes, brillantes, and that's why you're in this program. So just remember that. And it's, to be honest, it's not an easy exam, but it requires studying. It requires that you study, and I promise you that from the first practice exam you take to the real exam that you take, your score will improve. It will get easier. And it's an exam that you really can prepare for. So that's the kind of the recommendation for their GRE is the more familiar you can become with the material, the better. One last thing about the GRE that I wanted to mention is called the GRE subject test. So I mentioned that the GRE general test has the 3 sections that are writing, verbal, and quantitative. Some of your programs may ask for what is called the GRE subject test. This is a separate exam that is in one of these 6 areas: in biology, chemistry, literature and English, math, physics, or psychology. It's pretty rare that the university asks for this exam, but it could happen. So I just wanted to mention it. It's offered, these specific tests kind of are very focused on a certain area. And for example, if I'm doing a PhD in chemistry, they might ask for me to produce my score on the GRE subject test in chemistry. But the majority of you will not have to worry about this. This exam is offered 3 times a year. It has dates in September, October, and April. It's a paper-based test, which means you write it out. It's not on a computer. And it lasts about 3 hours, almost 3 hours. So that's just to keep in mind. If you see on a website for a university that it says GRE subject test required, then you know what this is and that it's an additional exam. So moving on to the next exam. The kind of sister exam for the GRE at the undergraduate level is called the SAT. And the SAT also measures kind of the same 3 areas in the the same 3 subject areas: reading, math, and writing. However, this information that I have on here has changed just a little bit. And so this has 3 sections of 800 points each. But it's worth mentioning that the scale is now out of 1,600 points. So it's 800 points in reading and 800 points in math. The writing section is now an optional essay that you can take. And so this test is about 3 hours long as well. And it's worth mentioning that there is a new free website for preparation that is called Khan Academy. And for the undergraduate students, you can work closely with your advisors to learn how to access this free material from the website that's called Khan Academy. Oh, excuse me. There's also what's called an SAT subject test. As you can see here, you can choose between 20 different subject areas in 20 different exams, in 5 subject areas. And so each exam is 1 hour. It's much more common to see the SAT subject test as a requirement than the GRE subject test for a graduate student. So those of you who are undergraduates, keep in mind that a subject test might be a probability for you in your process. So a couple last pieces of advice that I'd like to leave you with. So remember that standardized tests really are fundamental both for admission and for receiving financial aid. And those are our goals. We want to get admission for all of you from all of your universities, but we also want to see great financial offers. And so sometimes these points can be really determinant in whether you get a financial aid offer or a scholarship versus a student from another country who you might be competing against. And in order to earn this high score, remember that preparation really is fundamental. It's so important that you start early and prepare often. It really is. I promise you that it gets easier as you go along, and you really do build up your skills. You build up your skills for taking an exam. It's not something that we practice a lot. You might have practiced English a whole lot, but the whole idea of preparing to take a TOEFL exam or any kind of standardized test might be new. And so just keep that in mind as you work to prepare. And like I said, it is fundamental to start your preparation in advance. Prepare early and prepare often. So finally, I'll leave you with a few tasks that you have to do. Number 1, you should all create your accounts, your free account on ETS, and for those undergraduate students on College Board. Now your ETS account, which will be a username and a password, that serves for both the TOEFL and the GRE. They have different systems to log in, but it serves for both of those. And you should create your account, and you should make sure to send your username and your password to your advisor and to me. So for this reason, we don't want you to use maybe use a different password than you use on your email or on your other social media or on your bank accounts. We don't want access to those things. But you might want to use something simple like my name is Rachel Wilson. I might use RW Education USA 123 or something that is not easy to guess necessarily, but that is not going to give away your private access to your other accounts. So that's your first task. Your second task is to meet with your advisor to really make a plan for your preparation courses, your dates for your exams, and also your materials and how you will prepare. So this timeline is really, really important because sometimes you have to register a month or two in advance for the exams to make sure you have a spot, or you might end up traveling to another city or having to take an exam at a time that isn't really convenient for you. So you might have a preparation course available at the Colombo. You might not, but ideally, this is kind of the second step in the process. You have already talked with your advisors about some universities that interest you, and hopefully have made note of the deadlines of the deadlines for filling out your applications. And so you need to know that, this is also a part of your application. You need to have your scores back and have your scores sent to the universities by the time that the application is due. And so what you will do when you register for these exams, and your advisor will help you with this process, but you will select institutions that will receive your scores. So I'm registering for the TOEFL exam, and I can select up to 4 institutions that will receive my score on the TOEFL automatically. You can select 4 for free. And then after you receive your scores back, we will send your exam score electronically to the other institutions to which you will apply. So it's important that by the time you take your exam, you know at least some of the institutions in the U.S. that you will apply to. In terms of preparation materials, all of your Education USA centers have a wealth of resources in terms of preparation materials. Some are physical. You can go into the office and see the TOEFL prep books, the GRE prep books, the SAT prep books. And there are also virtual books. If you need access to virtual preparation, please talk to your advisors about the system called Overdrive. All of the Columbos are working in a virtual network through the library with a network called Overdrive. And through this, you can access your Columbo library and get preparation books. You can basically virtually check out a test preparation through this system. And so there's no excuse for not preparing, both on your own and with the help of your advisor and with Columbo professors. One other task, the last task we'll give you this week, is to follow these websites in social media, or these pages rather in social media. This is really, really important because any type of extra practice that you can get during this period of time is crucial, is very important. And so on Twitter and Facebook, you look for the ETS and TOEFL and GRE and College Board. Look for these resources. So maybe every time you sign on Facebook to check out what's happening, you can just see maybe one post about the TOEFL and read one article each time. There are also a lot of good apps and a lot of other good websites, both for learning English and also for test prep. So I'm compiling this, and in the next day or two, I will send you a list of these resources, of some websites that you can check out, because preparation doesn't necessarily require a fancy, expensive course. You need to come up with your own plan for how you're going to study and really set aside that time. So maybe you're a morning person and the best time is, 6:15 to 7 a.m. before you get ready for work. Maybe you are not a morning person, but you are willing to sacrifice your lunch break to dedicate that hour each day to study. Or maybe you're really busy all day, but when you get home in the evening, you can disconnect from everything and sit down and focus an hour and a half, 2 hours on this preparation. So you guys know best what works for you. All of you have been successful students in the past, and this is just like another type of studying. So think about really what time frame works best for you, but set aside a time that is dedicated to exams. You'll have other quote-unquote homework assignments from Opportunity Fund, such as looking for universities and different types of things. But this is a really, really important task that you need to dedicate time for. Otherwise, it becomes easy to kind of push it to the back burner. So we say put it as not the number one priority. So work with your advisor and let her know about your plan for studying, and that will also be complemented through different types of either online or in-person courses. So that's all I have to share with you guys today. Thank you so much for your attention, and again, this is period 2. This is your kind of second thematic period. So remember your assignments. Create your accounts on these websites and send us, your advisor and me, their username and password. This is just in case we need to log in, register you for an exam, send your scores somewhere. This is why we need access to your accounts. Number 2, meet with your advisor to coordinate your plan for studying, for your timeline for approximately when you will take the exam, November, early December, that kind of time frame. And then number 3, be sure to follow TOEFL, GRE, SAT pages in social media. Again, I will be sending a list of additional resources in the next couple of days that you can use for your study throughout the process. So best of luck, and we will be in touch soon via Facebook and via email. Have a great day.